evening. I'm Sarah Watson, and it is my honor to welcome you to tonight's show, Preserving the Mount Pulaski Courthouse. This is a part of our series that we call Looking for Lincoln Conversations. Tom Martin and Jamie Jones will share how a group of dedicated community volunteers came together to support, sustain, and preserve the Mount Pulaski Courthouse State Historic Site. Tom Martin is the former chair of the Mount Pulaski Courthouse Foundation, and particularly dear to me because he was instrumental in the establishment of the Looking for Lincoln and the Abraham Lincoln National Heritage Area. Jamie Jones is the current chair of the Mount Pulaski Courthouse Foundation. For more information about Looking for Lincoln conversations, you can go to our Looking for Lincoln Facebook page. It's now my pleasure to introduce Tom Martin.
Thanks, Sarah, so much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Tom Martin, and I'm a farmer from Mount Pulaski and born and raised here, sixth generation. And my son is coming in the operation, so he is seventh generation. So we haven't got very far from home. A little history on the courthouse and Mount Pulaski for those of you who maybe don't know about us, but Mount Pulaski was incorporated in 1836, southern part of Logan County. At the time, I don't think it was Logan County, it was part of Sangamon County. And then the state government created a separate county and carved that out. Logan County was carved out of that piece of Sangamon County. In 1846, the population of Mount Pulaski is about 300 people, and the original county seat was in what it was Postville, or originally called Camden, Illinois, which is just 10 miles north. Well, the citizens of Mount Pulaski knew they had the votes if they took it to a vote to be able to move the county seat. And so they did that. And in 1847, they had raised $3,000 and they built a new courthouse on our town square up on top of the hill. And all the records and county information was moved over in April of 1847. So we became the county seat, and that tied us in then to where the circuit riders, of which Abraham Lincoln was, would visit our community twice a year, and usually for 1 or 2 days, and in the spring and the fall. And they would hear the court cases that were be brought before the court, the county court. He basically served from 1847 until 1848, but then I think he became a congressman and went to Washington, D.C. So the history that I've seen is that they believe he probably was here serving as a circuit rider about 8 times. All the records were burned over at the new county seat in Lincoln. And so a lot of the records were lost, but to the best of their ability, that's what they believe has happened. So to get to our foundation is what we've done. Mount Pulaski, the county seat until 1855, so just for 8 years. And one interesting fact I came across today, as a matter of fact, is they had another vote within the county and they moved it back to Postville. Well, a group of citizens from Mount Pulaski sued, and it had to go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled that it was a legal vote and they could move it. So I had never known that before. But after they moved the county seat back to Postville, the courthouse served as a school, and then later on as the city government offices. In 1936, then they sold it back to the state of Illinois for $1. The state came in and renovated it back to pretty much the original looks of what the courthouse was when it was built, and they have retained ownership ever since. In 2011, Mount Pulaski celebrated its 175th anniversary. And the courthouse had reached a point to where there were basically 2 things happening. One, it was falling in disrepair. A lot of things, the window seals are rotting, the steps are rotting. And even though it was opened with volunteers and a site superintendent who got paid by the state, but everybody else was volunteers, which allowed it to be open. They were the amount of money flowing into to take care of the courthouse really wasn't happening. So a lot of the citizens in the community, we wanted to have a legacy project for 175th anniversary. We ended up with 3 legacy projects, but one of them was to create a foundation that allowed the community, those citizens in our town, to help take care of the courthouse. The ultimate responsibility, we determined, came down to us. Even though the state owned it, it's our ancestors. We see it every day, and we believe that, it was our responsibility to preserve that history and preserve not only that history for the country, the state, the country, and the world, but our own history. So we established a foundation in 2011. And we didn't have a lot of money at first. So we had small projects is what we did. And like I say, we repaired a lot of rotten window seals, the front steps. We did a lot of painting. The state allowed us, and where I'll give the state credit for, when we worked with them and those who were involved, they really gave us a lot of latitude. If we ran it by them, they allowed us to spend the money and do a lot of the work ourselves. So we scraped a lot of ceiling, scraped a lot of plaster, did a lot of work on the outside, and tried to stabilize the courthouse. And that was our goal. The other goal was to try and make the courthouse the heart and soul of our community again. I think a lot of the community were to that point where we're just driving by. We weren't seeing any longer. We weren't having any events on the courthouse lawn. And it had kind of lost its, the vibe that it used to have always for our community, because we always identified it with the courthouse. So what we started to do is have a lot more events on the square. We tried to bring more people into the courthouse and have events that made it very exciting and made the courthouse part of the activities that were going on in the community. And I think that's one of our great successes, along with the renovation of the courthouse, is that we bring a lot of people through. Everybody sees it. The children are a big part of it. And so that's been very exciting to me, to see everybody partake and retain ownership of the courthouse again. So a lot of the small projects for 3 or 4 years, we've raised a lot of money through those years, and hopefully Jamie can address that specifically. But then we moved on to some major projects that were really going to create the possibility of the courthouse not being operational any longer if we didn't take care of these projects. So I will turn this over to Jamie Jones, who has kind of an update and a slide presentation on what we've done since maybe 2017 and 18.
Hello, I'm Jamie Jones, and I am the president of the Mount Pulaski Courthouse Foundation. Thank you all for joining in. I do have a slideshow presentation, which just gives a brief overview of some of the big projects that Tom's talked about. If we could go to the first slide. This was project 1. This was kind of where everything evolved from. We noticed that there was a major crack in the ceiling in the courtroom. We had somebody come in, take a look at it. We weren't really sure what we were working with. I mean, it had been sitting without much attention for a really long time. So we had someone come in and got some really devastating news that it was quite a serious repair that was required, and that the building was definitely at risk. So if you want to go to the next slide, we started fundraising and working with the community, and the way the community came together for our little courthouse was just something that it was just amazing. It was something to see. And we were able to raise the money necessary to repair the beam in the roof, and once again one structural integrity of the building. And we actually came up with $157,822 for the repairs. And we were able to get the repairs started. The repairs started, if you'll go to the next slide, in the spring of 2016. The beam was stabilized and replaced. If you'll go to the next slide, you'll see some more of the broken beam and the stabilization of the beam. And I'm no contractor, so I can't really specify what exactly they did. But if you can go to the next slide, these are just more pictures of the work that had to go on to get the structural integrity of the building back up to code. So if you'll go to the next slide, this is more of the bolts put in to stabilize the roof, I guess. Next one. This is in the main courtroom upstairs, and it's looking at the west wall, and it's just some more photos of the work that was done. Next slide, please. This shows the crack that was actually closed and just how important it was to get that closed. So if you go on to the next slide, we were happy with the project was completed. It was a very exciting day, and it really kind of put the wind in our sails that, you know, we could do this, we could save this building, and we could keep moving forward. So then we moved on to project 2 on the next slide. Yep. And that was when we noticed that the interior, you might have seen it in the last picture with the scaffoldings, the walls were kind of crumbling. Trying to think of the best way to describe it. It was like they were just peeling. And so we weren't sure what was happening, and we had someone come in and do some tests, and it was determined that the bricks needed to be stripped, that the paint, all the different layers of paint on the bricks were actually kind of holding in the moisture, and it was creating a moisture problem in the courthouse. So the Mount Pulaski Courthouse Foundation again raised more funds and committed $125,000 towards this project. If you'll go on to the next slide, there's some exciting photos of them removing the brick, and then they had to, Tom might have to correct me on this one, but they had to actually find bricks that were from the era to replace some of the bricks that were crumbled beyond repair. If you'll go to the next slide, this is just more of the progress of the wall. There should be, yep, the next one. Then this was a long process. I believe this project happened over the summer, and it was a long, kind of slow, tedious project, but it was very successful, I would think. If you go to the next slide, we had to remove the back steps in order to really get to all the access points on the wall. Next slide. And the next one. This was more of them testing the different products they used to remove the paint from the bricks, because they wanted to be sure that it wasn't going to damage the bricks. And the next one. And the next one. So during this time, we wanted to get the community involved and show them what their support had helped us accomplish for the courthouse. And so the courthouse has been a couple different colors since it was built. It's been a plain brick, a white, and then it was also painted a red color. We wanted the community's opinion on what color they thought it should be. So we had this fun little thing we ran in the paper about voting on what color you would like. And plain brick was actually the winning vote, which was my favorite too. So this was just a little news article on the vote, and that was our previous site manager displaying the different red colors. If you go on to the next one. There it is, our beautiful completed wall with the natural brick. I think it looks amazing. They also put in a new stairway access and a little fence around the heating elements. It really looks nice, came out very good. All right, next one. All right, so project 3 is getting the rest of the walls done. They need the same attention that the back wall has received, and that is more of the bricks being stripped and all of the brickwork being tuck pointed, paint, and just the same attention. If you'll go to the next slide. So these are current photos of the walls that are remaining. So this is one side, if you'll go to the next one. And this is the other side. And on to the next one. Hopefully to be continued. And there should be some more photos of some other work we'd like to tackle. after we get the exterior all cleaned up, we're going to need to get the front steps repaired. They are falling in and need some much needed attention, as well as all the trim. The trim on the windows needs done again. And finally, the end goal is to get that peeling plaster on the walls repaired. Now that we think we have the moisture issue addressed, our goal is to get the inside looking just as nice as the outside. If you want to, yep. Here's some pictures of the courtroom. Here you can see on the walls the peeling plaster that we would like to get resolved. And the next one. These are the front steps. I know Tom mentioned that they were done several years ago, but as steps are, they need lots of maintenance and upkeep. So here we are again, and we need some more work to those stairs to get them safe and ready for more visitors. And here you can also see the trim along the side of the building needs some work as well. On to the next slide. And that's it. That's where our renovation projects have taken us. We are so thankful for the community and all the work they've done with us to help us get to this point, and we are so excited to see where the future will take us.
Thanks, Jamie. That was great. I'm going to bring Tom back here in a second to help answer you guys' questions. But before we do that, please remember that if you'd like to ask a question of either Tom or Jamie, please type them in the chat and we will try to get through as many questions as possible. So let's bring Tom back. Hi, Tom.
Hey.
Okay, so our first question is actually from Sarah, and it's for Tom. And Tom, could you expound a little bit more about the children's fundraiser for the Mount Pulaski Courthouse?
Okay, you cut out there for a second, Heather. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, I can ask the question again. Can you expound a little bit more on the fundraiser the kids did for the Mount Pulaski Courthouse? Share a little bit more detail.
Yeah, Jamie may have to help me. You know what? I've been out of the mix here for a while, but I think they had, what they call it, Jamie? Can you help me with that?
Wasn't it the penny
campaign? And those kids that started that were in 3rd grade, and they are now seniors in high school, I'm pretty sure.
Wow.
And I don't remember how much,
but right. I think they raised a couple $1,000s, but I had forgotten all about that.
And It's actually, the money came in from all different states in the U.S. Yeah. These kids were sending out letters to people in California, and they were sending money. I think they even got donations from Canada. It was amazing.
Okay, Renee Martin just
now that I remember that, I remember a ceremony down.
Oh, hold on, Sarah.
Down at the grades.
Sarah remembers some of this. Hold on. Hi, Sarah.
Oh, she muted.
Are you muted?
This was early on in my tenure, so it might have been one of my very first trips to Mount Pulaski, and it was an early morning event in the gym, and the kids were so excited, and it got, as I recall, national press coverage, and I think came to over $10,000. In the end, it was
just put in the chat that it was raised over 13,000, and it was called Courthouse Cash Kids.
It was one of those perfect examples of what a community can do and how the kids can be involved. Okay, you can take me back off.
So here's what I remember about that day is I felt like, and I remember being down there and it was all the kids in the gymnasium. We basically were in the back of the bus. They were driving the bus for that year or so that they were doing it. And we were riding along, and they did something that they probably got accomplished in 1 year, what would have taken us multiple years to get accomplished. It was amazing.
They were excited.
Shame on me for not remembering it.
That's okay. That's okay. All right, we do have our first question from the audience. And honestly, I think this question could go to either or maybe both of you because you've both done this aspect. So the first question is basically along the lines of how the Mount Pulaski Foundation goes about raising money. Like how were you able to raise the substantial amount of funds that was needed for the preservation project?
I could start because I was there early on.
I would say you go first, Tom.
Okay. Well, originally what we did, besides what the kids did for us, is it would annual dinner to where the whole community would fill the Legion Hall up and sell tickets and try and raise so much money. And then I mean, a lot of people made donations, you know, to the foundation, but a lot of it was just initially was having dinners and fundraisers, and then soliciting money from you know, nonprofit, other foundations that could give us money to help us do the repairs and stuff. And Jamie, you probably know more what you've been doing the last 4 or 5 years.
Well, I just have to say our community is just, it's always been amazing. They are so supportive, and they have rolled up their sleeves and gotten right in there with us and helped. I know a lot of it too is through tours. We give tours for the courthouse, and then people come and they visit us from all over, and they hear about, you know, the fact that we're only one of 2 courthouses left that Lincoln actually practiced law in, and Lincoln people love that. And so they send us donations, and yeah, the community and our donations have just been amazing.
Jamie and Tom, I mean, isn't the floor in the main courtroom still the floor that was there when Lincoln was there in the courthouse?
Yeah.
Like the floorboards, a lot of them are still the same floorboards that Lincoln would have stood on when he practiced court. Okay. I thought so, but I wanted to check with the experts in the room. All right, we have our next question, and they want to know if the Mount Pulaski Courthouse is a working courthouse or a museum.
It is a museum, and it is open Tuesday through Saturday from noon to 4. You can stop in, take a tour, look around. We've got a lot of cool artifacts, and you can just walk the floor that Lincoln walked.
Okay. Now, when you guys were talking, Tom specifically shared that the Mount Pulaski Courthouse has really become a place for the community to gather for things now. Could you share, like, what are some of the events that are held on the lawn or even in the courthouse, since you guys have done so much work to kind of bring it back to like a central element of the community?
I'll give an overall, and then Jamie can probably answer some more specifics. But I know what was happening was when Mount Pulaski would have events, usually they're around the town square. For many, many years, the courthouse would be closed, and would partake in all of the activities and celebrations we had. So what we started doing was making sure the courthouse was always open and had activities of its own going on to coordinate with everything else going on in the community. So I think from my standpoint, that was the big first move is making sure it was always open and that we were inviting people to come in. We used to shut our doors and it wasn't very inviting. So that's one of the big changes. And I'm sure Jamie can answer. I know we held a lot of community events up there.
One of my favorite events is the Prom Grand March. It is always held in the courthouse, and the ladies always look beautiful and their dates look so handsome, and they get announced, and then they walk out the courthouse doors and down the steps for pictures, and everybody gathers on the lawn and, you know, gets to wish all the kids well while they have, you know, an amazing night at prom. So that's one of my favorites. Then we have Second Fridays in the summer. We have a big Second Friday street festival, and everybody comes out and gathers around the square, and the kids are always running up around the lawn and having a good time. Some things we do in the courthouse, we always have Santa at the courthouse, and we offer free Santa portraits every year right before Christmas. That's always a fun one. The town has Christmas on Vinegar Hill, so people should be usually pretty familiar with that event. And we always open for that event and hold something inside, whether it's giving, you know, hot chocolate and warm cider, or we've even had a tree auction in the courthouse during Christmas on Vinegar Hill. So, I mean, we're just really bringing back the heart of Mount Pulaski in that building.
And one other thing I just remembered, and Jamie did a wonderful job this year with it. In 2011, we started a New Year's Eve remembrance to where we read everyone's name who passed away that year, who either lived in Mount Pulaski or had tied to Mount Pulaski, and would ring the bell that's there on the courthouse lawn. And it became kind of a staple for us, and it gave everybody a time to remember. And we'd always have good crowds here. The last few years, because of COVID and stuff, it's become a little bit tougher. But this year, Jamie, it's the first year I've seen it, Jamie, but it was online, and the names came up and the music played, and it was just very, very special. And I had a lot of people compliment you on that. So, but it's one thing special I think we can do, and a lot of people really enjoy.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's really cool because oftentimes when you think of a historic site, you think of it as something that is almost off limits to people to actually be to interact with at the level in which you're doing. And what you've done is it still does historical things. And I know, like, traditionally you've had a Lincoln birthday party often at the courthouse, and there are the historical things, but you've really turned it into more of like a public center so that everybody takes the ownership. And I think the community spirit that comes from that, if for those of you who've never been to Mount Pulaski, the courthouse is like the center of their square. And in Illinois, all small towns have a square, and the courthouse is the center focal of their square. And it's just really a very cool thing. Okay, let's see what other questions we have. All right. Could you share a chat? Okay, there's gonna be lots of them. But what is one significant challenge that you have faced when preserving the Mount Pulaski Courthouse, and how have you overcome it?
I'll go first again, Jamie, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, just so everybody understands, I have not been involved with the foundation specifically for 4 years now, but my biggest challenge in getting the foundation going and getting things accomplished is the state of Illinois changes position personnel on a regular basis. People move to different positions. And so we establish a really good relationship with the people and they move on. And so it's like starting from scratch again. And so it puts your projects, you take one step forward and 2 steps back sometimes. So that's for me, was one of the most difficult things, because I was kind of the liaison with the state for a long time and established some really wonderful relationships and worked with some great people who really made a difference in how we were able to move. But it's a very slow process, which is frustrating sometimes when you're sitting here and you're ready to move forward and it just takes so much time. So and how we overcame that is we just never stopped knocking on the door and showing up and saying, here we are, we're not going to go away, and making things happen.
Persistence.
So, but that's one of the frustrating parts. Yeah. So,
Jamie, have you have anything to add to that?
No, I pretty much, that's the thing with these projects is it's so many working parts, and you have to have an architect, and you have to go through this state agency, and you have to get approval from this state agency, and just coordinating all of that is almost a full-time job. And a lot of us are volunteers, and we have full-time jobs on top of that. So trying to make ourselves available for phone calls and conference calls and scheduling appointments, it's just a lot sometimes. And like Tom said, the best way to do it is to just keep communicating. Just keep communicating.
Yeah, that was definitely a challenge. All right, here's our next question. Are local state senators and representatives working to get funds to repair the walls? As far as you guys know.
Yes, we have had tremendous support from our local state senators and state representatives. Sally Turner has been a wonderful supporter of our organization. Tim Butler has been another one who shows up for us. He's been to fundraising events that we've had. Sally's been to several events. Just they're advocating for us as much as they can, and we feel their support and we thank them.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so because the Mount Pulaski Courthouse is an old building, so you got the one wall done, and now you're working on the next 3 walls? Are you planning to take them? Okay, I guess it's going to depend on funding, but are you planning to do them one at a time, or would you like to do all 3 of them at once if possible?
We would love to get all 3 done as much as possible at the same time. We want to get this behind us. We want to get the outside walls done, and then we can move on to things on the inside.
And the plan would be to restore it to that original brick color that the back wall that you did of the courthouse, correct?
Yes. We want to do something with the bottom, the foundation. We didn't love the red color, so we do want to get that touched up. But yeah, the plan is to go back to brick.
Okay, and that's really what it would have looked like.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
Can I add something real quick? Yeah. First of all, when we did the survey of what color the community wanted, even though that was Jamie's choice, I was totally blown away. The only color most of us have ever known is red, and it was just a foregone conclusion for me that was going to come back red. And when it came back, the brick color, I gave my community a lot of credit. I was totally amazed. But it was the right choice because it is just gorgeous. The other thing is the state of Illinois did on that project. It was about, I think, $170,000 project on the back wall. They did reimburse us on that one. They had some monies allocated, about $240,000 during 1 year, and we were reimbursed the total expense. We came up with initial funds, but they reimbursed us for that. So I just want to make sure we know they're doing the best they can, and it's really been a good partnership, even though it's slow sometimes. But they did reimburse us.
Well, that's awesome. So the original brick, so the color would have been that color when Lincoln would have gone to the courthouse, the original brick, or was it painted red back then too? Do we know?
I
don't think it was painted red. The earliest pictures I see of the courthouse, it was whitewashed. All right. But
okay.
That was even after we were not a county seat anymore. It was more like 1880s and stuff. So I don't know. I've never really seen an original picture of the courthouse, but the earliest I know they whitewashed it.
Yeah. Okay. We have a couple more questions coming in. So give me just a second. Somebody asked how to ask a question in the chat. So, okay. Next question. So for those people who are not familiar with the interior of the courthouse, could you, one of you, whichever one would like, kind of describe like the layout of the courthouse? Because we saw pictures of the courtroom, but it really didn't describe the rest of the building. And I think that might be of interest to our viewers.
Jamie?
Tom, you want to take this one? Or you want me to take it? Okay.
Yeah.
So you walk in, and it's like a foyer area, and along the walls you have different offices. So you have like your city clerk. Tom, what other offices are there? The treasurer, sheriff's office. Yep. And then there's this like grand staircase that you climb, and there's a little landing, and then you climb a few more stairs, and you're into this big open courtroom. And you have like the judge's chambers and the jury room, and then behind the rail is where the jury would sit and the judge, and there's a couple tables for where the lawyers worked, and it just has this ambiance to it. I can't even describe it. It's just, you just know you're standing somewhere where important things happened, and it's just amazing.
Yeah. It's like you go back in time. It's like walking back and you open the door and you know this is not a modern courthouse. You walk in and it's this really cool building, and then you open the door and you're back in the 1840s, and you know, for all you know, Lincoln could be arguing a case in the second floor of the courthouse. Mm-hmm. So it is a really cool building. And I know that I think Tom mentioned it, or I can't remember which one of you did, but it is one of only 2 remaining courthouses that Lincoln practiced law in Illinois. So it is special because of that. And I think that when you go there, you get that feeling that it's special. So.
See, and one thing I've always been proud of too, and even though maybe he was only in town, 8 different times, our ancestors, the people in Mount Pulaski had an influence on him. He'd come and stay overnight in some of the leading community members' homes, and he'd spend time at eating there and sitting and talking with members of our community. And that was before he became a congressman, before he became president. And so, I mean, we've heard the stories. I mean, you hear stories passed down that, I mean, he would carry on. He was a very special member of our town, and people consider him a member of our town. But they had an influence on his life like everybody else in Central Illinois did. So that's a very special feeling for our community.
Yes, it is. Lincoln did not just arrive in Washington. he had friends in the different communities that he visited and close relationships with them. So that is a good thing to remember. Okay, we are running out of questions. So I think what we're going to do is I'm going to ask one final question to kind of, yes. Oh, someone pointed out that Lincoln did not have his iconic beard yet when he was visiting Mount Pulaski.
That is very true.
So, very true. So I think we're going to wrap.
Jamie may mention the statue that the community is raising money for. Do you know much about that? Jamie and Phil Edwards and them raising.
Oh, I think he's asking,
Okay.
do you know much about the statue that they're trying to raise money for?
Yeah. The community is working to get us a Lincoln statue on the courthouse lawn. The community's raised a lot of money so far. It's a really nice statue of Lincoln. I believe he's sitting on a bench, holding some case papers for a trial we believe he might have tried in Mount Pulaski. I think, if I'm saying it right, Tom. But he's sitting on a bench that'll have an opportunity for people to sit on the bench with him and take photos. And it's really another very inspirational thing that Mount Pulaski is doing. And I'm not sure, Tom, do you know who they contact if they would want to donate to something like that?
Renee, we need Renee to send that name into Heather again. Renee's part of that.
You could definitely.
But I know he's a famous.
So
right. He's a famous artist. He's done a lot of other statues, and I think it's a bronze statue, I believe.
I think he did correct? The ones in downtown Springfield, right outside the museum.
Oh, could be. So maybe Sarah would know who that
did those.
Right.
Yeah. And if you have questions, you could always reach out to the foundation. We are on Facebook, the Mount Pulaski Courthouse Foundation. We also have a website. It's mountpulaskihistoriccourthouse.org, and you could always shoot us a question.
Tom, Renee has answered your request. So the case is cast iron tombstone case. The artist name is John McClary. And if they would like to help donate to said statue, they can donate through the Mount Pulaski Museum. Ask and you shall receive, Tom. Renee is watching.
Yep.
Renee's still today.
So I do have, before we ask our last question, and Jamie, I will ask this because you're the current president. So we talked a lot about the foundation. If someone wanted to get involved with the foundation or is interested in donating to the foundation, how would you go about doing that if they wanted to help preserve one of the walls of the courthouse or something like that?
Yeah.
Or even just get emails and know what's going on.
I was going to say, yes, just reach out. Like I said, we are on Facebook, Mount Pulaski Courthouse Foundation. You can find us on Facebook or our website, which is Historic Courthouse, Mount Pulaski, historiccourthouse.org. And just reach out and we'll get you on the list and we'll communicate with you. And if you want to join or, come hang out with us, we could have you come to some meetings and we'd love more people.
Okay, that's awesome. All right, so my final question to you, why do you think it is important to preserve the Mount Pulaski Courthouse, but also other historic places connected to Abraham Lincoln? So specifically for you though, why is it important to preserve the Mount Pulaski Courthouse?
Tom, you can go first.
Okay. For us, it's our responsibility. That's how I look at it, and that's why I think people in our community have been so supportive and so passionate about it. Is it is a piece of our history that is world history, and we're the ones on the front line, and we're the ones who should be taking the lead on this. And so for us, it's very simple: is that we take it personal that this is one area that we can really be effective in, and take it upon ourselves to lead that charge, to be able to preserve not only our history, but show other communities that you can get it done. And, I take my grandchildren up there, so who knows what they take away from those and from what they see. And so if that history wasn't there, if they're not seeing those pieces of the people who came before us, it's a piece of their lives that they'd never have an experience of. And so I think you never can tell how somebody's going to respond when they hear stories and they see history and they experience those things that happened 200 years ago before them. And I think that it becomes part of their life, and hopefully we have some influence on some of these young people, and they can see that. And without the foundation and without what we're doing, that might not be possible.
Okay. Jamie?
For me, the courthouse is just, it's a part of who we are. It's a part of who Mount Pulaski is. And it's so unique that we have something like this in our communities. Most communities don't have this, and we are lucky and blessed enough to have it. So it's our responsibility to make sure that it stays open for my grandkids and my kids' grandkids. I mean, my kids have grown up in that courthouse. Thankfully, they've gone to school here, and their teachers take them there. They have lessons that revolve around the courthouse and the history that is in our community. And I'm so thankful that those instructors have given that to them, and that they've grown up in that building. I mean, they watch that building when we're uptown, and they make sure that, it's staying, upright, nothing's falling, and that they're taking care of it. And I'm teaching them that, and I'm teaching them pride in their community and pride in their history. I mean, this is where we came from. This is how we got to where we are. So we have to keep that stuff.
Okay. Well, I would like to thank both of you for joining us tonight to talk a little bit about the Mount Pulaski Courthouse Foundation and the wonderful work you guys are doing to preserve the Mount Pulaski Courthouse for future generations. And I would like to thank our audience for tuning in and for typing in some wonderful questions. And we will be back next month. So for tonight, have a wonderful evening, and we will be back next month. Bye.
Thank you.